Hey everybody, it's Jim T. Graham with RC Groups, and today we're looking at the FUTech FY-41ap. It's a return to home system with integrated on-screen display, and it does a lot of other cool things. What I thought we would do is just lay this out and look at some of the components, how they work together, just to give you an idea and the ability to wrap your head around the whole concept. The brains of the operation is right in the middle. And this receives information from all the devices you see surrounding it. So let's take a look at that. You have inputs on both sides. They're labeled well. You have a power manager. This is going to go to your ESC and battery. You have a GPS unit. This will allow you to talk to satellites. You have a USB plug that will allow you to change the setup and update your firmware. And then we also have a main connector that will connect to the unit. And we have diagrams in the review that you can look at for that. We have a speed meter. This is going to take air in to tell the unit how fast you're going. It's very accurate. And then these two cables are going to go out to video in, video out of your camera. And then, I don't know if this is clearly stated, this is an extension cable for your GPS. So if you're mounting that GPS back on the tail, you're going to use that to get it farther away from your video transmitter. So let's take a closer look at how everything plugs into the unit. In the lower left-hand corner, your speed tube will connect using just a standard servo type plug. And in the upper right hand, your power management cables will plug in there. The way the plug is made, there's no way to plug that in wrong, which is nice. Also, when you plug this in, I thought that I had a loose fit, and really what I found out was you just needed to apply more pressure to get it really plugged in, which is great because you know none of these things are going to fall out. Just something to be aware of. Then this is your next loom of wires. They're going to plug in the lower portion of this plug, and everything's noted and printed on the side with a negative, so you can be sure to get your wires plugged in the right way. We have one more wire loom that plugs in above that, and that would be your GPS. And once again, we're noting the negativity. So now that's in. And then we have these plugs. The USB cable, well, let's start here. Your video in and video out are going to plug in next to the power management. And those are powered. So you want to make sure if you're plugging that into something that the voltage is correct. I went ahead and cut the lead off of mine and powered it separately. Also, this is for your USB. So the top allows setup of the return to home system. The bottom plugs, you just move it down. That would allow you to change your on-screen display. These are all for your servo inputs. And I have a diagram in my review for you to look at to know what goes where. So that's a brief overview of everything here. Once again, the manual is great, and it's also in my review. So here's the unit in the fin wing Penguin. I tried it without the isolation mount and with. I liked it with. And, I tried to tidy up my wires a little bit. There are a lot of wires in there, but the installation was pretty simple. I used the manual with the information I just gave before, and everything was going the right direction, working well. I've got the receiver on one side of the fuse, and then you'll see the power manager is on the other side. That's because it's near the battery and the ESC. And then the front of the fuse is clean, and that's just for the battery or batteries if I add batteries in the future. And then finally, there's the airspeed meter. And I thought about putting it on the side and some other places, and ultimately I put it in the nose because I figured that's where the cleanest air is. When it's in the nose, you have to be careful, but I've knocked it out of there twice. I use hot glue to hold it in, so that's a nice way to not harm the tube, but get it to stay. You'll see that I have a pan and tilt camera on top. Then I have an RC Logger Pro for taking high-def video, and this is my setup. And now we'll go in and we'll just look at how, after you get everything in there, you're going to have to change some parameters. So let's look at that. So in the link that corresponds with this video, you'll find my full review that goes over all of this pretty extensively. And the instruction manual also goes over this really well. So I'm just going to lightly touch on this. If everything's plugged into your main unit correctly and going out to your receiver, then you should be able to test it and make sure your ailerons and elevator and rudder and everything's moving the right direction. The other thing you want to verify is that your gyro is moving everything in the correct direction. So on the RCGroups review, there are images to show you how to do this. What you're looking at now is a screen that you can get to from your transmitter. You toggle from ABM to 3D on your transmitter 6 times, and this screen will pop up. And through this screen, it's your setup to allow you to change things. So if your gyro is moving everything backwards or just the rudder backwards, in this setup screen, you can change that so it moves it correctly. You can also set up one of the switch modes. You can pick a few different things you might want on one of your switches, and you can tell it which way the main unit is pointing in case you have it pointed in some weird direction. You can change flight speed, so when it returns to home, you can tell it how fast to go. And I do use this unit to control my throttle setting. There are a lot of different things you can config here. You could also do this through a computer, but for me, this was the easiest way to go, and this is what I use at the field. So through this menu, I was able to get everything moving the right direction. And here's a little diagram of the way things should go. And once again, all of this is in the review, so refer back to that for your setup. So now it's time to take the plane to the field. You know, it's been windy and I could not find a good day. We've been out with it 2 or 3 times now and shot some videos, so let's go check that out. So the fin wing Penguin was buttoned up and ready to go. We had 15-mile-an-hour winds, but we had the onboard gyro, so that was not a big deal. And it's time to take off. So you're seeing what I was seeing through the goggles. And while I have to say it sounded kind of frightening to fly an airplane with goggles over my eyes, but the second that you're in the air and in the cockpit, it's a lot easier to actually fly FPV. And it was also tons of fun. While we did get kind of high at points in altitude, I really wanted to go down low and scorch the earth like I do in flight simulators. So let's look at the on-screen display. And, you know, there's a lot of information there, and all of it's important. So let's talk about what the on-screen display is actually telling you. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, number 1 is your ALGO, and that is your GPS altitude. Below that is a little icon of a satellite dish, and this tells you how many satellites are being received by your GPS unit. Right below that, number 3, that is your airspeed, GPS speed. And then below that, we have all the battery information. So we have number 4 is your battery voltage. 5 is battery power consumed. 6 is your distance to home point, very important. 7 is your power battery current. And this is one of the things I look at quite a bit. And then we're going to move to 8, which is right next to that. That is your flight mode. So you could be in a stabilized mode, return to home, circle, things like that. And then beside that, we have the current latitude and longitude of the plane, which could come in handy if you were to crash. 10 is your relative altitude. 11 is your GPS speed. And one thing that I did do a lot is if I was a return to home or loiter, I was trying to verify that my throttle setting was right. So I would watch my speed to make sure it was staying kind of in the same place and watch my altitude to make sure I wasn't going down. And it's a nice warm feeling you get when you realize it's working just right. And then we're going to move to 12 is your flight total mileage. And 13 is your flight time, very important. All these things are important, I guess. 14, current course of flight. So this would help you know which way you're going, of course. And then 15 is the angle of turning to the home point. And then my favorite, I've got 16 to go over. 16 is your attitude table. And then 17 basically represents your plane. So if you don't know where you're at, you could point the arrow, make sure it's pointed at the center, and start flying yourself home that way. So currently we're in ABM mode, or stabilize mode. This is using the gyro on board to keep everything smooth and steady. And one of the great features of this unit is the loiter feature, and that is ACM. And so now we're in ACM. I literally could put the transmitter on the ground. The airplane is using satellite positioning to create a figure eight at the point that I flip the switch. And so what I'm doing at this point on the ground is I wanted to verify that my DVR was working. And so I hit ACM, I pulled it out of my pocket, saw the record, light was on, everything's good. And this would come in handy if you were having some sort of FPV issue, ground issue, where you needed that plane to hang in the air while you took care of some business. Also, if maybe you lost FPV, you could put it in ABM, pull your goggles off, and visually find the plane. Of course, you should always have a spotter with you standing by that could say, hey, your plane's right there. Now we're going to try the return to home function, which is another safety feature in my eyes. When you hit RTL, return to launch, the plane using the GPS and where it started when you plugged in the battery on the ground will fly itself back to your location in circle. So once again, this is hands off. You can lay your transmitter down while the plane is flying itself. And as we see, my plane is flying back to the airfield. And then when it gets to the home location, then it will circle over your head, and then you can manually take over. And this comes in handy also. You should always have return to launch as your fail-safe when you're setting up your transmitter and your receiver, because if it flies out of range or you have a transmitter issue, then now you have the safety feature of the plane coming back and flying over your head while you do whatever it is you need to do to regain control. So now we're back in ABM, the stabilized mode, and I took off that day, and I felt like I was behind the plane. I would go right, then I would go left, I was just not in front of it. And I thought, what's going on here? Because it's never really flown that way. And I realized I had everything turned off, which is also a great feature of this system. Some units like this, you cannot turn it all the way off. But let's say you had an issue, something was reversed, or the throttle was jacked up in some way. You can turn the whole system off and just fly it naturally. But I did realize in ABM and stabilized mode, I was not flying behind the plane. Keeps it nice and stable and level, and keeps everything going the right way. So Jason Cole was with me, and he said, you should land this thing in the goggles. And since it was my first flight, I don't want to crash my bird right off the bat. I just got everything in it. I wanted to fly it a few more times. And there's a nice low pass, which is awesome. And he's like, no, man, you got to do it. So I actually took off in the goggles. And so I'm going to swing it around and land in the goggles. And here we go. It seems kind of like a frightening thing to do, if you've only flown RC, from line of sight. But it's so natural. You do feel the wind, so I always felt like I'm crabbing a little bit. But you just line it up, keep it level, chop the throttle, and lay it down. And there we have it. An awesome landing. And let's not forget, this also includes waypoint navigation, and this enables you to fly autonomously with up to 20 waypoint settings using your FY ground control station software that you can download from FuTech. So I included this clip. I'm flying around, I'm in loiter, and what happens? Bam! An airplane hit me. Jason was coming from behind in his FPV plane, and I'm not exactly sure how we hit. I haven't seen that footage. But the hit locked up my left aileron at full down throw. So all the airplane wanted to do, and you just noticed I went from ABM to RC. This is what I want to bring up. All the airplane wanted to do was just roll over, just like that. So I can't believe I thought of it, but I flipped the switch from stabilized mode to RC, so now there's no stabilizer. And my thought was, if I'm truly locked up in the air like that, I wonder how it's affecting my uh, servo that's trying to actuate that aileron. So I'm in RC and I'm yelling, I'm landing, everybody get down. Now, the other interesting part is the natural inclination was to pull my goggles off and see my airplane. But in about 2 seconds, I realized that probably the best way to land this wounded bird would be through the goggles because I could see exactly what was going on and how I was doing. And I was down there, and one of the guys at the field pulled up next to me. And as you can see, it just keeps wanting to go left. So I'm jammed up in the rudder, and I've got the Ellie and aileron pulled back. And at this point, I'm thinking, I wonder if I can actually keep this level for a landing. But it took me about this long to get everything straight. And right here, full pull, flare. I couldn't believe it. I was sure I was going to just blow the nose off the airplane and ruin a lot of good equipment. But I really think flying through the goggles is what allowed me to get her down like that. And just another plus. I also want to say another thing. We had a guy that saw us doing this, and he really wanted to try flying FPV. So we put him in the goggles, and he said, I want to land your plane. And I thought, well, okay. I kind of love this plane, but we'll give it a shot. And let's watch that.
Yeah, you're good. You're perfect. Oh my gosh. Another first FPV landing.
I am absolutely loving this. Oh my God. Here, take it. I can't. Oh, jeez. Well, that was, you talk about an experience. My goodness.
So what was it like, Everett? I mean,
It was absolutely fabulous. Now, I flew real ones 40 plus years ago. The approach, other than it being, it doesn't feel like a Cessna 172. It's not as sensitive, so it's kind of mushy.
Right.
But it gives you time. It's fabulous.
And you have the gyro on there too. We have a light gyro just for the wind and keep everything nice and stable. And so tell everybody what you do out here all the time. The only thing you do is
fly master pattern.
Right. And that's all you've ever done for as long as I've known you?
Since 1989.
Do you think you might try and get a little FPV going on something?
I have to.